reviving open civilization as a future goal for the Ummah, for all Muslims all over the world. Because today, major countries have a future vision. They have future goals. Like Russia has a goal, America has a goal, European Union has a goal, China has a goal, India has a goal. But what's the future vision and what's the future goal of Muslims? Unfortunately, there is no clarity about this. So I am offering reviving Islam as an open civilization, as a future goal and vision for the Muslim Ummah. And this revival must be rooted in our Islamic civilization, in our Islamic tradition. In Arabic, I call it التجديد المؤصل. التجديد المؤصل, because any revival attempt which is not rooted, in Islamic civilization and tradition is doomed to fail. And also any attempt for rootedness without tajdid, without revival, is also doomed to be fossilized and frozen without producing any results. Okay. When I was a child in Istanbul, I used to see from the window of my high school 3 buildings. One was the synagogue where the chief rabbi lived in Istanbul. And then the other one was the Topkapı Palace, where the caliph, the leader of Muslims, lived. And then I also saw another church where the head of the Orthodox Christians, the Orthodox Patriarch, lived. So I was wondering what made it possible for these 3 religions and their heads to coexist, to live together in a city. Because, we were studying in our history books that during the Middle Ages in Europe, there were so many religious wars. But how come Muslims solved this problem not only among one particular religion, different mezhebs, different denominations, different sects, but also different religions getting together. In Europe, they were all Christians, but different denominations like Catholics and Orthodox, they were like fighting with each other. Protestants, they were like fighting all the time with each other for so many centuries. But how come, Muslims, they coexist, not only different communities within the Muslim community, but also non-Muslims together. So this was an example of open civilization in Istanbul during my childhood, and I wondered what made this possible. And later on, I made research about this. And another very strong example of Islam as an open civilization may be seen in Jerusalem, in Kudus. So Ottomans, when they built cities, they made gates, for the cities. And in the entrance, on the gate, it was written, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. But there is one gate, they did not do that. They wrote, La ilaha illallah, Ibrahim Khalilullah. So there is no God except Allah, and Ibrahim is the friend of Allah. And this is an inscription during the time of Sulaiman II on Al-Khalil Gate in Quds, in Jerusalem. Because from this gate, Christians and Jews, they were entering the city. That's why the Sultan ordered that on the gate, it's written, La ilaha illallah, Ibrahim Khalilullah. You see this openness to accommodate non-Muslims and show them the respect. It's still clear, it's still there until now. and today you see the massacre, taking place in the same land. So from where to where? Look, big change. Yes. So Islam brought us open civilization, and the first example of open civilization was built in Medina by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this first example of open civilization is clearly manifested in the Medina Charter, Wathiqatul Medina, where Rasulullah ﷺ set together with Christians, Jews, and mushriks, especially Jews and mushriks who denied his message, who denied the book he brought. But he sat together with them and he accepted them as the citizens of the state, equal citizens of the state. And later, this model, which was founded by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, continued by Umayyads and Abbasids. And later, a good example in Andalusia, where Christians, Jews, and Muslims, they established a good civilization. And the most striking example of open civilization is in India, where Muslims ruled India, and those Hindus and Buddhists, they were not Ahl Kitab. They did not belong to Ibrahimi religion. But Muslims granted them the same rights that they granted to Christians and Jews in other parts of the world. But why? So this is another example. And the Ottomans, when they established Ottoman Empire, they also established an open civilization. Christians, Jews, and people from other religions, many other religions, they lived under Islamic rule. So this is what I call open civilization. And it started by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in Medina, and it continued until the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, because this is what Islam taught. From an Islamic perspective, there are 3 levels of brotherhood. So first, brotherhood in Muhammadiyah, that we Muslims, the Ummah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, we are all brothers. And then brotherhood in Ibrahimiyya, that there is brotherhood between Muslims, Christians, and Jews, because we all follow Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. And then brotherhood in Adamiyya, this is the universal human brotherhood, that we are all children of Adam. And everyone, is respected from this perspective, and there are mutual rights and duties among brothers. So the highest level of brotherhood among Muslims, then among Abrahamic religions, then children of Adam. And open civilization in Medina, open civilization during the Abbasid time, Umayyad time, Andalusia, and India, and Ottoman Empire reflects these 3 levels of brotherhood in Islam. And also there were covenants, between Muslims and non-Muslims, and these covenants are very important, and they are still preserved. Rasulullah ﷺ, he made covenants with non-Muslim communities from Byzantine Empire, from Sassanid Empire, Christians, Jews, and many of them. Some of the documents are still preserved. Yes. So this is an example of the covenant, written by Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib in 624, and it was given to the monks in the Mount Sinai. It's still preserved. So it grants them rights and freedom of religion. Yes. But when Muslims, started modernizing, westernizing, and Islamic world became colonized, the open civilization of Islam was terminated. The system of closed civilization came, and from the perspective of closed civilization, this diversity of different religions, different ethnic groups, different languages was not acceptable. The modern nation state model required that everyone follows the same ideology. So, like, you look at the Soviet Union, look at the fascist ideology, look at the nationalist ideology. So, in the Muslim world, this open civilization was abandoned, and the nation states and nationalism was abandoned in its place. And today, there is a reaction against this modernization, westernization, which ended up with the intellectual dependency of the Muslims on the West to decolonize the education and the colonial mentality, the colonial systems, installed in the brains, in the minds, and in the hearts of the world. The decolonizing education is needed for the intellectual independence of the non-Western peoples all over the world. It's in particular needed by Muslims. Intellectual independence, academic independence, to free ourselves from the colonial ideologies, from the colonial education, which tries to make everybody the same, and which tries to bring a single civilization to dominate the whole world, make the Western civilization dominate the whole world. But the Islamic system was open civilization. It allowed all civilizations live together, coexist together. Hindu civilization, Buddhist civilization, Christian civilization, Jewish civilization, and in Iran, Zoroastrian, the Majus civilization. Islam gave right to all civilizations to coexist, live together. But this westernization, colonization, aimed to eliminate all civilizations and make the whole world one civilization. The Western civilization dominate everywhere. So this is what I call closed civilization. So closed civilization sees itself as the only civilization and tries to eliminate all other civilizations and dominate all over the world. But open civilization accepts that there are multiple civilizations in the world, and they all should coexist together, although there are religious disagreements. Like, we disagree with Christians, we disagree with Jews, we disagree with Hindus and Buddhists, but we respect them and we give them the right to coexist as a civilization. But this colonialist, perspective, westernization, modernization, sees all these non-Western civilizations as backward and tries to terminate them and become dominant all over the world. So this is what I call a closed civilization. And today, we need open civilization because imposing Western civilization all over the world as a project failed. It did not succeed. For the last 3 centuries, the Western imperialist powers, they aimed to impose all over the world Western civilization. But this project failed. Although there is a strong impact of the Western colonial education all over the world, but they could not eliminate other civilizations from the face of the earth. So today we need open civilization so that all civilizations can coexist together in peace, without conflicting with each other. But how are we going to do it? So we need to do it by benefiting from the Islamic model and historical experience of open civilization. So today, diversity is increasing. People communicate with each other so easily. They travel so easily. There is like everywhere open civilization. But Islam has been open from the very beginning. The cities like Balkh, like Delhi, like Bukhara, schools, they were very cosmopolitan. And they don't know how to solve these problems. Why? Because they have no experience about it. And their theology, their philosophy is not sufficient enough to deal with these problems. But we Muslims, we have rich experience in how to manage heterogeneous, diverse groups. Also, how to manage a world where there is like multiple civilizations. Yes. So there is a famous book, I'm sure you know it. It's by Abu Hassan Ali al-Nadwi rahmahullah, ماذا خسر العالم بانحطاط المسلمين. So what did the world lose with the decline of Islamic civilization? So my answer is that the world lost open civilization with the decline of Islamic civilization. So Muslims, suffered, and the whole world suffered from this colonialization and westernization, and trying to eliminate all civilizations from the face of the earth, and just make everybody follow the Western civilization. So this is what we have lost as humanity. Yes. But today, we need to ask a new question. What will the world gain with the rise of Islam? We cannot simply sit and be sad what the world lost, by the decline of Islamic civilization. So today, we have to come up with a new vision. What the world will gain with the rise of Islam. How we as Muslims contribute to the civilization in the world. What can Islam offer to the West and the whole world? Okay, let's talk about the future. Let's not only talk about the past. Past is history. Okay, it's good to know history, but at the same time, let's think about a future vision for the Muslim Ummah and for the humanity. And then how can we contribute to the solutions of global humanity? كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. You are the best community, and you are brought up for the humanity. أخرجت للناس. Okay, so we are brought up not only to serve the Muslim community, but الناس, the whole world. So we as Muslims, how can we contribute to the solutions of the problems of the whole world? Okay, so we have to think about this. And my answer is that, we can contribute to the solution of the problems of the world by reviving open civilization, which will serve as a tool for diversity management, which will make it possible for different religions, different ethnic communities to coexist together. Yes. So as I have mentioned, like I divide civilizations into two categories. A closed civilization is a civilization that considers itself as the only civilization in the world and tries to dismiss, terminate all other civilizations and dominate the whole world. And this is what the Western civilization has been trying to do for the last 3 centuries, which failed. But an open civilization is the one that adopts a tolerant approach, for social inclusivity towards other civilizations, and it stays away from discrimination and establishes a system where different civilizations can coexist in the world altogether. When you study world history, you see that in the West, they divided history of the world into two periods, the classical period and the modern period. And the modern period started by the rise of Islam. There are two very interesting books. One is titled Universal History from the Earliest Account of Time. It is written by a committee in 1730, and it was sponsored by the British royal family. It is 62 volumes. It's printed in England, okay? And this book divides into history into two periods. The first period is the ancient history from volume 1 until volume 19, from the creation of the world until modern history. And what starts modern history? It starts with the life of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So they recognized importance of the life of Muhammad ﷺ, which changed the epoch, which started the modern history. And then another very interesting book is titled Universal History, Ancient and Modern. So this is written by William Maver in 1802. Again, it's sponsored by British royal family, 25 volumes book. It divides into history into two periods. The first period is ancient history from volume 1 up until volume 10. So this is from the creation of man to flood. And then the modern history, what makes modern history start? The Arabs, life of Muhammad. You see, they recognized that the rise of Islam changed one period to another period in the world history. So Muslims made history at that time. But later, they became close-minded. They completely dismissed the role of Muslims in history. So now, when you read a standard history book written in the West, it starts with Greeks, continues with Middle Ages, and then modern period, as if the whole world is Europe and there is nobody else in the Europe. They completely dismiss anything other than European history. So this is Eurocentric history. This is an example of closed civilization, as if they are the only ones who lived in history and there was nobody in the history. Okay? But when you study their early literature, classical literature, you see a different perspective. So this Eurocentrism came up with imperialism. This Eurocentrism came up with colonization, trying to represent the Western civilization as the only civilization in the world and dismiss Islam as a civilization. But their earlier generations of historians, they recognized that there are two major civilizations, like the Western and the Islam, and Islam is the modern civilization. So this was their earlier understanding. Okay. Yes. Move on. Yeah, let's move on. Okay. So the question that I want to ask is, what made Islam an open civilization? So what made Islam an open civilization, in my view, are three things. The first is the multiplex view of Islam, the multiplex worldview of Islam. And then the second is the epistemology of Zanniyat in fiqh. And the third, the Ademiyya principle. These are the three things that made Islam open civilization. First, the multiplex worldview. Second, Zanniyat epistemology in fiqh. Third, the Ademiyya principle. These are three things. And now, in the rest of my presentation, I will explain what I mean by multiplex worldview, what I mean by Zanniyat epistemology and methodology in fiqh, and then what's Ademiyya principle. I am bringing these things to your attention because if we want to revive Islam as an open civilization, we have to revive these things. We have to revive the multiplex view of Islam. We have to revive Zanniyat epistemology in fiqh, and we have to revive the concept of Ademiyya also. Okay, so let me go one by one and explain what I mean by multiplex worldview, what I mean by Zanniyat epistemology, and then what I mean by Ademiyya. So Islamic worldview accepts that there is a visible world and the invisible world and also divine world. So we call it in Arabic Mulk Malakut Lahut or Alam al-Shahada, Alam al-Ghaib, Alam al-Ilahi. So three levels of existence. Of course, this could be divided into more detailed categories, but three major levels of existence. And in Arabic, this is called Maratib al-Wujud. Maratib al-Wujud. You know, I translate Maratib al-Wujud to English as multiplex ontology. And this multiplex ontology leads to multiplex epistemology, which is called in Arabic Maratib al-Ulum. Maratib al-Ulum. And from the perspective of Maratib al-Ulum, there are different types of knowledge. Knowledge gained through sense perception, al-hawas, al-salima, knowledge gained through reason, al-aqliyat, and knowledge gained from wahi. So you see that multiplex ontology or multi-layered concept of the existence leads to multi-layered understanding of knowledge. So multiplex ontology leads us to multiplex epistemology, and this leads us to multiplex methodology. For every level of existence, you need a different method to study it. But in the West, in the modern world, there is uniplex ontology. They are either materialist or idealists. So either they accept material world or the metaphysical world. So the idealist. So there is a dichotomy. You know, they don't accept that there are three levels of existence at the same time. But this multiplex ontological perspective helps us go beyond this false dichotomy, material world or non-material world. Why not both? You know, and the same way in the West, there are positivists who focus only on the empirical knowledge, and the idealists who focus only on the rational knowledge. But they never get, they don't know how to bring them together. But from the multiplex perspective, you know, Maratib al-Ulum recognizes that there are different types of knowledge and they should coexist. They are not mutually exclusive of each other. Same thing with the scientific method. And then this Maratib al-Wujud lead us to Maratib